All right, hey everyone. So just as a reminder, this is the electrical engineering talk, and I'm excited to give y'all this because I think if you are considering a career in STEM and more specifically engineering, I think that our guest today gives a lot of good advice and definitely talks about the broad range of things that you can do within the field. So go ahead and enjoy the interview. So hey everyone who's watching right now. My name is David. I'm a medical student at UT Southwestern. And today we're going to be talking with Eric here, who works in New York City, and I'll let him explain kind of what he does. Do you want to say a few words real quick?
Yeah, my name's Eric, like David said. I studied electrical engineering with a minor in mathematics at Texas A&M. Graduated with that degree and then made a transition into a computer science career here in New York. But I'll be talking mostly just about my experience in electrical engineering as well as my friends' experiences with the jobs they're looking at now in that field.
Okay, sounds good. So Eric has picked some questions that he's going to answer. So to get started, could you describe your typical day?
Yeah, so generally speaking, engineers answer emails, go to meetings with either their team, other teams in the business, or their clients if you work with clients, and then do actual engineering work. And as the answer is going to be for the majority of the questions in this interview, I'm going to preface them all by basically just saying it depends, because electrical engineering, as with many other engineering, is very broad. Like, there's 1,000 different jobs you can do where you could be an electrical engineer doing one job and another electrical engineer doing a different job. And if they looked over at each other at what the other one was doing, they'd have no idea. But they wouldn't understand anything because it's ridiculously varied. But sorry, what was the original question?
Describe your typical day.
Yeah,
I think.
so I said the three things that you mainly do, it's basically just going to be those three things, and the ratio of, how many emails you spend versus how many hours you sit in meetings is just going to be up to what job you do specifically. Because some of them are a lot more people oriented, where you're interfacing with clients, and that's, mainly your job. But then there's other ones where you might just be in a lab and never see another human being. And you're just surrounded by wires, soldering boards all day.
So what would you say is your favorite part of each day?
My favorite part of each day is definitely the actual engineering part of the day, because I thoroughly enjoy computers, computer science, math, just technology in general. So the emails and meetings are not as bad as I feel like they're made out to be a lot of the time. It can be a bit of a drag, but in general, it's not like I'm sitting here just counting the seconds away. It's just kind of like, hey, whatever. I'm drinking my coffee, eating my snack, kind of half paying attention most of the time because it's not really relevant to me. But it's not bad. It's fine.
So you already talked about this a little bit about the different types of jobs, or where you said that there's a lot of different types of jobs.
Yeah,
But
engineering, specifically electrical and mechanical. There's everything under the sun. You could be designing the power grid or working on the power grid. You could be designing microchips. You could be just doing software. Anything that has a circuit board on it or uses electricity. There was an electrical engineer somewhere in the design of that device. So, if you look around you right now, every single thing that you see was either built by an electrical engineer, powered by an electrical engineer, or the thing that was used to build it was built by an electrical engineer. Your house, your lights, your computer, your monitor. I've got a bottle of pepper right here. I don't know, the glass that made this, whatever factory made that glass, electrical engineers built that factory. The pepper inside of it, whatever thing, tractor they used to harvest it. Electrical engineers had a hand in that. It's literally, there's no end to the amount of variety that of the jobs that an electrical engineer can do. So yeah,
That seems like a pretty common theme. Chemical engineers will also say the same thing about how everything
yeah,
involves chemical engineering.
it is engineer. You know, that's all the world is. It's just engineer. Everybody else just lives in our world. It's we're the ones that are from.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So this next question, okay, obviously your job is not mostly physical strain, but
Oh yeah, no.
how would you describe like the mental strain at your job?
Um, mental strain. Well, okay. So the one thing I'll say about mental strain is if you have a lot of big deadlines, and that really just depends on you as a person, because some people I know, they don't care at all. Um, and then some people get very stressed out about it and they end up staying for, you know, 10 hours a day in their office because they're worried about whatever upcoming thing. So it really just depends on you as a person, but generally speaking, the only strain you're ever gonna have is just meeting deadlines. And that again, it depends on you as a person, but also your job, because some jobs don't have that many deadlines. And if they do have deadlines, it's just kind of like a suggestion rather than, the client is breathing down my neck and he's going to try to eviscerate me if I don't have this for him on Friday. It's, again, it depends. It depends. It depends.
Yeah, I mean that's deadlines are definitely not unique either to
Yeah, I mean,
engineering.
any job.
So, would you say that your job is exciting to you?
Yes. No, again, it's usually between the emails, the meetings, and the actual engineering. The engineering is what is the exciting part most of the time. So I definitely enjoy it. And if you're considering this, you should enjoy it because if you don't enjoy the actual meat of the work, then yeah, you should do something else. There's plenty of other jobs that pay equivalent to what I make that don't involve this. So
Okay, so um, I guess yeah. I mean, can you live and work anywhere in the U.S. or can your job be done only in certain places? I think the answer is, or what would you say? Maybe, I mean, you live in New
So you
York
mean like in
City.
general, if I was looking for a job, where could I go?
Yeah, I mean, is it more concentrated? Do you feel like you can only work in a big city, or because I feel like there's not a lot of rural jobs for electrical engineers?
Um, yes and no. So you're not going to live in a town of 200 people, but unless it's next to a city. But you don't have to be in like New York or San Antonio, LA. There was when I was in college, there was a job I was looking at for an internship, and I forget what it was. It was like working on local government infrastructure, mostly water systems. And that was in Colorado. I forget the name of the town. But it was like a smaller town in the middle of the mountains. I mean, well, okay, it wasn't like a small town, but it wasn't large by uh, any meaning. So
Hmm.
you can definitely live in a smaller suburban area if you want to. It's very going back to the original question. It's you can do whatever you want basically, as long as you're not in Montana 100 miles from nowhere. That's and even if you are in Montana 100 miles from nowhere, there are jobs that can be done 100% remotely, and depending on the company, if they're going to allow you to do that. So theoretically, yes, if you found a job that didn't require anything of you physically, it only required you to have that computer and an internet connection, then you could live in Alaska for all they care, as
Yeah,
long as
I
you
remember you
can.
telling me about wanting to go to Alaska and work remotely.
Yeah,
So
I'm thinking about that still. Getting a Airbnb for a month, going up to Juneau, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're gonna kind of switch topics a little bit. So we're gonna talk about your education and or training. So I think that the answer to this is probably pretty self-explanatory. Does your job require high school, community college, technical college, or
College,
four-year
college,
college education?
that's it. No other answer. Okay, well, like I said earlier, I do software now, and for software, there's more options because the tools are free, basically, or most of the tools are free. So when you talk about education, the only purpose of education is to show, well, obviously it's to learn, but the purpose of having the degree itself is just to show employers that you are qualified for whatever they're looking for. Because, I mean, they could interview for 6 hours and they still wouldn't be sure whether or not you were actually good enough. So the paper is basically just a guarantee that this guy knows what he's doing. And with software, since it is mostly free, the tools that you use, you can, instead of a college degree, you can just build things. You know, I can make like a clone of Twitter that I coded myself. And if they want to know if I can do the job, instead of looking at the piece of paper, I can say, well, just go to this website and there you go. There's proof I can do this job. But
Mm-hmm.
with engineering, it's not like that because most of it is either requiring extremely expensive machines or extremely expensive um, software in order to actually produce something. So I can't go out and prove, oh, can you do this job? Well, here, I built this motherboard. Take a look. I can't build a motherboard. That would take factories and billions of dollars. So the only way to really prove to a company, if you've never had a job before, the only way to prove to them that you can do the job is to have a 4-year engineering degree from an accredited college. So yes, you have to go to college to be an
And
electrical
I know
engineer.
that engineering degrees are kind of they kind of have a reputation of being very, very difficult. So like those are some of the harder and some of the harder degrees that you can get. What would you say to someone who might be like intimidated by that?
I think that if you enjoy it, you'll be okay. And the thing is, if you don't enjoy it, you shouldn't be doing it anyway. Everybody I knew has everybody I know slash knew had slash has an immense enjoyment of the material. You know, when we would be learning about, how uh, modern physics plays into like a transistor and how the electricity works and everything, every page you would turn in the book and read the new, oh, the electrons will actually just disappear because of, what's it called, Schrodinger's equation. It's like, they loved it. Everybody loved it. We enjoyed it immensely, and that really tapers off the difficulty of it because I mean it's like they say, if you enjoy what you do, you never work. So it's I just want to say to the because a lot of people they think that they don't like it. They'll be like, oh, I hate math or oh, I hate science. I'm no good at that. And I feel like they tell themselves that so much and so often that it makes it true for them when it really doesn't have to be, and they would enjoy it
Mm,
if they actually sat down and thought about it and appreciated what's actually going on, in a circuit or how a piston works, whatever kind of engineering you're doing. So as far as difficulty is concerned, it is hard, but it is very manageable if you enjoy it.
okay, that's a good answer. So now we're going to talk a little bit about working conditions. So how many days and hours, like how many days a week, and then how many hours per day?
Generally speaking, 9 to 5, 5 days a week is what you can expect unless you're traveling or unless you have slave drivers for bosses. One of my friends works a lot more than 40 hours. Actually, he hasn't talked about it in a while, but he used to work like 50 to 60 hours a week just because it wasn't required of him, but he's kind of neurotic about being good enough. So
Hmm.
yeah, you're I don't know anybody personally that has an hourly wage. You're going to be salary, and that means that you're expected to be there from 9 to 5, but really you're expected to meet the deadlines. So if it takes you longer than that, and you have a lot of work to do, then probably going to have to be there as long as it takes. but 9 to 5 is a
Mhm.
good rule of thumb.
Okay. And how are your vacation days for like every year?
I forget what I get. I think like 3 weeks, 2.5 or 3, something like that. It's pretty much industry standard, just 2.5, three
Mm.
weeks.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty typical for any job.
Yeah, it's whatever you're gonna get anywhere else, basically. No more, no less.
And so I know you talked about this a little bit, but could you talk a little bit more about, do you work mainly with other people or by yourself most of the time?
So again, it depends. I work mainly I work alone, but the things I'm making are for other people. And depending on what you do, that's kind of how it is. Like when you're actually sitting there doing the engineering work, whatever you're working on, you're going to be alone at your desk doing that. And then you'll hand it off to somebody. You're not going to be sitting like with 3 other people looking at the paper, all giving input. That slows things down. It's generally not good to do that. So the actual engineering is going to be done mostly alone, but you are going to have a lot of meetings and interaction with other people about what you did slash what you're doing.
Okay. Um, so, do you work mainly indoors or outdoors?
So you're laughing because it's very obvious for me that I work only indoors exclusively, but a lot of people do actually go outdoors because, again, it depends. Um, I work exclusively indoors. I have a friend at Dell who works exclusively indoors. Um, but there are, if you're working for client, if you're a contractor working for clients on um, usually like buildings slash infrastructure, you might actually be doing site visits. So you'll be going to wherever they are and looking around, while they're building the thing and looking around, making sure they're following the designs, making sure everything is being built correctly. So there is an outdoor component depending on your job.
Okay. And that's kind of a nice segue into if you do any traveling for your job.
Yeah, it's up to you really. Certain jobs. So like I said, the guy who did the site visits, he worked for a contracting company that does. Uh, there's basically 3 situations I would say. Either one, you don't travel. You're at your place. You're at your company's building, and that's it. Maybe every once in a while they want you to fly somewhere. Like here at my company, how often is it? It's like every 2 or 3 months. I forget. We have a large all-day meeting, which like a bunch of people, our whole team or our whole department basically has an all-day meeting in which we plan kind of the direction for the next, until the next meeting. And for that, we have a Florida office, and the Florida guys fly out to the main office here for like a day or two, and that's it. So they travel like 5 or 6 times a year for a day. Um, so you might be expected to do something occasionally like that, but generally speaking, you're either going to be at your desk, no travel. You're going to be at your desk with site visits within your town, so travel, but not really. Or you will be traveling a lot because one of my friends works for a smaller company that provides parts for larger companies like Caterpillar or Kubota. And I forget exactly what he designs, but they're like motor controllers, things that interface with the uh, the user interface, the gear shift, the buttons, etc., and the actual components of the device. It's like the little microcontroller where when you push the button, the microcontroller tells the light to turn on, because nothing is analog anymore these days. It's all digital. So he builds those parts and then they sell them to other companies. And part of his job specifically is to go to those companies when they buy the parts and show them how to install them. Like, okay, you want to use our motor controller? This is, you got to plug it in like this. You got to use this, blah blah blah. Just all the all the tech specifications of how to actually use the thing. And going back to the other question of like how hands-on is it, that one, his job is pretty hands-on because he actually gets in there and physically works with the motors. He has like there's like a lake. They have like a man-made lake near their building where they drive around boats that they're not building the boats, but building the parts that go into boats. So they actually, it's a pretty hands-on job for him. And he has to travel a lot.
Mm.
But that'll be something that'll be in the job description. They'll tell you about that beforehand, and you can decide whether or not you want it.
Yeah, I know some people would definitely prefer that. Some people probably wouldn't like it.
Yeah, I think he doesn't like it too much. He travels a lot. So.
All right, so on to, well, one of the last, maybe we could talk, maybe there's a few more questions after this, but talking about money, how much money do people in your type of work generally make?
It depends. Generally, if you just graduated with a degree in electrical engineering, you'll probably be making anywhere between 50 to 120,000 on your first job. The average being probably around 65 to 70. But there's a lot of room for, promotion and raises. It's just everyone's different. The sky's the limit, really.
Mm-hmm. And then the other question, so how is your job affected by the economy?
Well, this whole COVID thing, I don't think any of my friends have felt it at all, really, in terms of their job, at least. Like, we're working from home. The guy who works for Dell, I don't know if I said it was Dell or not, but the guy who works at Dell has to go into the office every once in a while because he works on servers and he's got like a rack next to his desk that he actually needs to configure manually. So he has to go into the office every once in a while to, configure the thing in person. But besides that, he's still generally at home because he can, the software he's working on can be done just from a remote connection.
Mm-hmm.
But, at my company, there's been no layoffs. Work basically went on without any kind of even a speed bump from when we went to exclusively working from home. We actually worked from home on Fridays every week already, so it was like it had already been stress tested and shown to work.
Mm-hmm.
So
and I know we've talked before about like the industry with like programmers and stuff, or people maybe kind of doing this kind of work you're doing, being pressured maybe to move away from office spaces and maybe make this kind of situation a little bit more permanent.
yeah.
Do you feel like that's a good move, or how do you feel about working from home now that you've been doing it for quite a while now?
I don't know what the right answer is because some people do very well from home, but other people don't do so well in terms of like for me, when I'm at work in the office, I don't do anything else. I feel weird doing anything else. I watch or I put YouTube on my phone. I listen to podcasts, music, or videos, whatever. But when I'm sitting at my desk looking at my work monitor in the office, I don't do anything else. I work. And if I don't have any work to do, then I read technical documents. And that's basically it. But when I'm at home, it's like if I don't have any work to do, time to pull up Netflix. If I'm not, because that happens. It depends again on your job. If you're like inundated with work constantly, or if you have a decent amount of free time because things just aren't really moving that fast. But yeah, as far as like an entire industry shift to working at home, I don't know. I know that Twitter has the Twitter CEO is saying that Twitter is just going to be permanently work from home now. But really, the only thing that matters is if you have actual hardware you need to work on, like the server or like the engine components that my friend builds, or site visits, which you could still work from home and then go to the site and just cut out the office. But yeah, basically, is there any physical interaction required, and are your employees doing well in a work from home environment, or has productivity taken a massive drop? And I think in general, productivity, at least in my experience, has gone on without interruption. So for me, it would really just be the physical aspects, which my job does not require. So it's it's a complicated issue with a lot of ins and outs. But generally speaking, if you can do it, I think it's a good option because you don't have to pay for a possibly very expensive office park or office building.
All right, well, I think we're coming close to our time. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about to people who might be considering doing something like engineering, electrical engineering?
To people who might be considering it, so I want to say do it for sure. Do it if you're even thinking about it. Make it your number one priority. And I'm extremely biased in this statement, and the reason I say it is because when I was in college, there was an introduction to engineering class that. So when you went to A&M, I don't know if it's. I think it's still similar system, but when you went to A&M when I was there, when you first got there, you weren't an electrical engineer. You were just an engineer. You weren't mechanical, electrical, nuclear. You were just an engineer. And you would apply to the actual ones after like your first semester, I think. And you'd see whether you got accepted or not. But the point is, all of the engineers would take this same introduction to engineering class. And I was a TA for that class when I was a junior and senior. And one day, we had, as a TA, we would give like our own lectures once a week, where it's just us, not the professor. And one time I asked the kids, I was like, oh, okay, so I shouldn't say kids. I asked the students, I was like, okay, so are any of y'all going to do electrical? And they were like, no, no, we don't want to hit ourselves. Not a single person. It was like 30 people. Not a single one of them wanted to do electrical. And I was like, you should do it. It's great. And they were like, no. So I want everybody to do it because nobody wants to do it. But yeah, I would just say if you're thinking about it, definitely think about it more because it's very rewarding. There's a ton of really good stuff to learn. And the other thing I'd say about it is the greatest part of doing STEM in general is not the work, it's the learning. Because, you know, I don't know, the work just usually isn't the interesting part. Sometimes you'll come up against a problem that is, this is for me at least, I'll find a problem that doesn't just immediately have a solution in my head. And I'll be like, oh, well, what if I do this? And then that doesn't work. And then I'm invested. Oh. So it draws me in. When I find an interesting problem, it really draws me in. And, you know, before I know it, 3 hours have passed and I've been sitting here eating chips and drinking soda for that whole time, just staring at my screen without blinking. And I like that. That's amazing to me. That's my perfect day. But generally speaking, the learning. So just really enjoy your experience in college. Absorb as much as you can. There's so much out there, physics-wise, math-wise. And once you get into your job, you're going to lose a lot of that. You can still read in your spare time, but your job is not to learn, it's to produce products. And learning is much more, what's the word I'm looking, satisfying, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So just really enjoy college. Definitely do electrical engineering. Screw everything else.
I'm gonna go ahead. I guess thanks for your time. I think that's probably long enough. I know the people watching this don't want to don't want it to take too long, so
I don't know what
I'm
you're
gonna
talking
go
about.
ahead and
They want to listen to me all day long. I'm more interesting than anything else they're trying to do today.
All right, well, thanks everyone again for sticking with us until the end here. We wanted to keep it as concise as possible, but hopefully still you had some of your questions answered that maybe you were thinking about. And I hope that you have a better idea now of what your life would be like as an engineer.